Hey everyone, and welcome back to Men Can Be Anorexic. My name is Connor, and for this week's video, I'd like to talk about an aspect of my experience with anorexia that may surprise some people. But as always, before I say more, a trigger warning for anyone going through or recovering from anorexia, just because I might say some stuff that could be triggering or upsetting, and the last thing I want to do is put anyone in a bad place. Believe it or not, when I was anorexic, I loved being surrounded by the foods I refused to eat. Meals, snacks, desserts, everything. If it was something I wouldn't let myself eat, I loved being near it and watching other people enjoy it. This is something I used to do all the time, and I would do it in more than one way. The first is probably the one you're picturing. Hanging out with friends and family as they eat unhealthy foods and politely declining to participate. I wouldn't decline to eat altogether, but usually I would opt for something that was allowed under the strict rules of my diet. My sister loves to bake, so this was a ritual I practiced on a pretty regular basis. The second way I surrounded myself with food was a lot more private. Every night, for a stretch of several months, I would climb into bed and watch YouTube videos made by a guy named Ken Domick. For those who don't know, he's a middle-aged Canadian man who films himself doing crazy food challenges. Back in 2013, for example, he ate a 9-patty Wendy's cheeseburger. At the time of this recording, that video has well over 1 million views. Honestly, I can't help but wonder how many of those views have come from people suffering in the same way that I did. I'm not exaggerating when I say I watched videos like that one obsessively. Just like the bland, perfectly portioned meals I ate every single day, my consumption of Domick's videos became borderline ritualistic. I would pee, brush my teeth, weigh myself, climb into bed, and watch this man that I had never met and will never meet eat foods that I wouldn't dare to touch. Why? Why did I love gawking at foods that I wouldn't let myself eat? Why did I get a twisted sense of satisfaction from watching other people eat foods I wouldn't think of touching? Looking back, I think a couple different things were going on. First and foremost, I wanted to be in control. At that point in my life, I felt powerless over the things that were happening to and around me. Anorexia was my extreme and very unhealthy way of coping with that feeling of powerlessness. Resisting the foods that nobody else around me was resisting gave me a strong sense of control over my body and my immediate environment. Secondly, as I've discussed in a previous video, my initial fear of the freshman 15 slowly intensified until I was terrified of weight gain in general. In addition to making me feel as if I had control over my own life, resisting certain foods was an obvious way to keep my weight down. And finally, on top of everything else, it's possible that I was crying out for help. As I've said before, I'm pretty confident that I was subconsciously aware of how disordered my behavior was. But because I'm a man, it never occurred to me on a conscious level that I was anorexic. Like most people, I was under the impression that only girls and women suffer from eating disorders. Unable to confront my behavior on my own, I may have hoped that somebody would take note of my restrictive tendencies and try to initiate a conversation. And as a matter of fact, that's exactly what ended up happening. Now I have to admit, I'm going to be a bit of a hypocrite for the rest of this video. From this point forward, the rules of do as I say, not as I do are officially in effect. Let me start with this. Nobody should ever feel ashamed or embarrassed for having suffered from anorexia. Fat phobia teaches us to equate thinness with value. The fatter you are, the less you're worth. Sadly, this is how we're all taught to think. In this context, it's not surprising that many people across the gender spectrum feel the need to restrict their diets. Engaging in this behavior is not a sign of weakness or fragility. But with that being said, I can't help but cringe a little bit when I look back on those parties and gatherings and think about how restrictive I was in front of my friends and my family. In a way, I was putting my eating disorder on display for everyone to behold. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a little emasculated. To so publicly suffer from a fear of weight gain isn't exactly manly. And that right there is the problem at the heart of this channel. Masculinity is so extremely rigid, and it leaves no room for anything even resembling vulnerability. Femininity is also very rigid, but in general, girls and women are allowed to be vulnerable. And as a result of that rigidity, I have this lingering sense of embarrassment when I think about how I used to behave around food, especially in social settings. Nobody should ever feel this way, but I don't think it would be healthy or productive for me to deny that feeling. In fact, I think the healthiest thing I can do is acknowledge my embarrassment and try to remind myself that it's just another product of patriarchy. And that brings us back to one of the core themes at the heart of this channel. Patriarchy sucks for everyone. And I think I will leave it on that note for today. As always, thank you so much for watching. Down in the description box, you'll find the phone number for the Anorexia, Nervosa, and Associated Disorders hotline, which you or anyone you know can call if you're looking for immediate help. Thank you so much, and keep your eye out for the next video.